shot though. We're gonna tight there.
Good shot. Right.
Probably should have been a blue sheet. Live. This is a case where we believe mental health and criminal responsibility collide. Right here in Burton at the 1200 block of LaSalle, where my office and the Burton City Police Department worked a case since this weekend. That is a case that officers and detectives will not forget. Chief Brian Ross.
The Burton Police Department on the 12th around 8 p.m. were contacted by Your Ride driver and their passengers. They told 911 that the smell was so horrific that they thought that there was a dead body in the house, and the smell was permeating off of the people that lived here. Officers arrived on scene. They tried to make entry into the house. The house was so horrifically smelling, and the conditions inside, the officers couldn't make their way through. They contacted myself. I called out the fire department with their hazmat team. They come out and they cleared the house. We did not find any dead bodies, but what we found was even more horrific. We found 44 live dogs. During our search, we found 13 deceased dogs. The dogs were in kennels, stacked 3 high. Dogs that are on the top are urinating and defecating on the dogs underneath. Just a terrible, terrible situation. The owner of the home and her child were in the custody and care of the animals. They were arrested. I contacted the sheriff for resources. He contacted animal control. They came out to the scene and we rescued the dogs.
So this is not a case uncommon to Genesee County, and these are ever evolving. And when you have animals that are alive and that have to be cared for, that's where our animal control and our veterinary services work. There is disease within those 44 animals. We're trying to save all of them. But the 13 that were dead, as the chief mentioned, some were in freezers, some were dead on the basement floor. These were like Shih Tzu, Yorkies type style dogs. They're sent for necropsy as to why they died. Starvation is a concern, neglect, and ultimately when you have dogs that are not getting cared for medically or starving, that's torture. And when we have these cases and we work with not only the police department, our co-labor of justice for those that do this to animals is the Prosecutor David Layton.
Thanks, Sheriff. This was a very, very difficult police report to read. You know, I've read hundreds, if not thousands, of police reports in my career as prosecuting attorney. This one and the probable cause statement that was provided to the judge, written by the Burton Police Department and the Sheriff's Department, was extraordinarily difficult to read. So sad, talking about dogs in cages, dogs caged who are dead, dogs under tarps. Just a very difficult situation. There's also, as the sheriff mentioned, the mental health component. We do believe that the younger of the two, the son, has some mental health issues. Those will be explored in the courts. certainly the young man will have to be sent to the forensic center for an examination as to his competency and or criminal responsibility. I have charged the 2 occupants of this home, Patricia Ann Catherine Stone, she's 49 years of age, with 3 counts. Count 1, cruelty to 25 or more animals. That's a felony punishable by up to 7 years in prison. Count 2 is also a cruelty count, but allowing animals to suffer unnecessarily. That's also a 7-year felony. And count 3 is failure to dispose of dead animals. That is a misdemeanor. It should be noted that there is a consecutive sentence possibility, so a judge could stack the sentences. But this is more about the animals than it is about these people. These people were obviously overwhelmed. The mother, the woman, was breeding dogs, according to what I read in the police reports. And my message, and I think I share it with the sheriff and with the chief and the mayor, is that breeding dogs is a responsibility. It's not a hobby. It's not something you do lightly. These are live creatures, and if you become overwhelmed, you need to reach out for help, because what can happen is what happened here. So that's my message on this. Now, certainly there should be some responsibility, but when I looked at this case, I was thinking about the dogs. That's what I was thinking about. Sheriff?
Point made. Somebody has to be responsible, and there's a wide net that law enforcement cast when we have a scene like this, but ultimately is how do we keep it from being repeated in other homes? That's why we have our media friends here. If you are overwhelmed, whether it's an animal, somebody mentally ill, the elderly, something that is taxing your ability, there are resources. A 911 call. If Burton City would have gotten a 911 call saying, I have too many dogs, can someone help? Chief Ross would have sent assets over here to keep from any dog dying. But when you get to 57 dogs that we know of, that's when it gets overwhelmed to even the system. This house is condemned, and when we reached out to the Burton Police and not only the fire department, but it also includes the government. Mayor Haskins, what was your responsibility for this home, and what's the future?
Thank you, Sheriff. When we were notified of it, of course, the police chief notified me that evening of the deplorable conditions that were here. Immediately, we reached out to our code enforcement officer, who paid a visit to this home, condemned it. The house is condemned. It's unlivable at this point. So obviously, that will have to go through the court proceedings as well to move forward. There is one thing that I would like to say, with as deplorable as the conditions are, just as the sheriff and the prosecutor was stating, the educational process about there being help out there for people to be able, that are getting overwhelmed with the situation, so it doesn't turn into a situation like this. But I can't thank our police department, I can't thank our fire department, and I surely can't thank the prosecutor and the sheriff's office for all that they did in this whole situation. If you think about the tragedy that law enforcement and firefighters and the prosecutor and everybody have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and then when you run into a situation like this, the smell just being so atrocious that it was just overwhelming. To sit there and think about what they have to go through, even observing the animals and the pets, because we all love pets. We're all owners of them, and we want to care for them in any way we can. So I can't thank them enough for their due diligence, their hard work, and being involved in these tragic situations to make things better and to try to get it to turn around. So again, thank you all so much for all you do in helping our city as well. Thank you, Sheriff.
And finally, I want to thank all the volunteers, animal control. Many of these dogs are infected with parvo, which is a very contagious disease, so they have to be separated. And so you take Jay Parker, who's the director of animal control, and his staff, they have all the other animals they're caring for. But I will tell you that those animals are being cared for to the best of the ability. They were all seen by the veterinarian this week. The owner had signed over consent to give those dogs to animal control, so we're able to get them rehabilitated. That's always been a struggle. And I've done these stories before where Michigan does not have a built-in forfeiture clause that allows these animals to get rehomed. It's a court process that the prosecutor's office and the court has to go through, like the property that you would see on the house, but they're not, they're living property. So we're very thankful to Sergeant Bennett from the Sheriff's Office, who were able to get those animals signed over from the owner to try to rehab them and ultimately get them into healthy homes. And so they're being cared for right now. We've not lost another one yet. We're still at 44. We want to keep it that way. But it's a system that came together on a late night at around 11 o'clock, and there's no time to wait. We've got to get it done. So I, too, want to thank everybody here because everybody does their part. Questions?
I just had one. I know the hazmat team had to go in there. Was there a separation between the living quarters, or were they just living amongst this?
So Chief Ross will respond. The question is, how was the living quarters and the separation of how these dogs lived inside the house, Chief?
So there was a obvious hoarding situation here. There was garbage everywhere, clothes everywhere. The dogs were mixed in throughout wherever they could find an area to put a cage. They were in the bedrooms, they were in the basement, they were in hallways.
Do we know for how long? How long have the dogs been in this room?
I don't know how long. Obviously quite a significant time.
How long did it take you guys? Obviously, you arrived at the residence, but to clean it all up. I mean, were you guys there all night?
Yeah, we were there for probably 5 hours or so.
Wow.
Thank you, everybody. Good. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Thanks for coming.